Calix Boxing here, joined with D-Style Boxing as well. And we got a treat today. We've got the great Steve Kim. Appreciate you for rolling through, man. Definitely appreciate it.
Welcome.
Thanks, guys. What a busy day. Now, hold on. I don't know what time zone you guys are in. I woke up at 4 a.m. When did you guys come out of bed?
I'm Mountain Time, so I woke
I
up
woke
at
up
5
at
a.m.
6 a.m. and I was like, oh, Lord. And then I had already missed Robeisy Ramirez fight. So
Yeah.
I think we're Pacific Mountain Central.
Yeah, I had to do a bunch of things. I did the Coach JB show, then I did my segment on Fearless, and then I'm going to do you guys here, and then I got to do the 3 knockdown rule. But what a day! All I could say is bonsai, bonsai. Everyone bow.
Steve,
Bonsai. I mean, God, dog.
Steve, I texted you after the second round and I said,
Fight's
he's
over.
over. And I said it in my breakdown. I don't know if you agree with this, but Inoue is many things, and one of them is a rhythm fighter, and he's a special rhythm fighter. And I said in the breakdown, if he gets in a rhythm, it's over. It's over. Like nobody. Fulton Jr is a great fighter, but he's not going to be an exception to that rule. Inoue got in a rhythm early. When I saw him immediately when the fight started, and he stood in front of him, almost still like this, I said he looks comfortable. He looks extremely comfortable in there.
You know, when you look early on, when that jab was landing low and high. And, everyone thought, okay, Fulton's going to be the bigger guy here. He's going to bully him, and he's going to finally knock this guy off the block. It never happened. And Fulton got into that really wide stance. And I thought the minute into the second round, he said, well, I can't do anything here. And that's the thing that really was interesting about the analysis of this fight when people compared this to Hopkins Trinidad. And I was all over Hopkins way back when. I covered all 3 stages of that middleweight tournament. The difference is with Fulton, he cannot punch. People forget that Bernard Hopkins was a really good puncher at 160 who scored like 19-second knockouts. And Trinidad, for as great as he was, had really had to plant his feet, and he had heavy legs. He could not move or would not move the way an Inoue could. And Inoue, I'm just telling you, he literally could have pitched a 12-0 shutout, or it could have been a knockout. And Cal, it was funny because I looked down at your text and you said that. Yeah, this fight's over. I said, wow, you really went that early.
You could just see it was evident early, the gap, right? And I think that's one of the fallacies coming in. We'll talk about several fallacies coming in. Was I think they tried to break they like the box guys in. They tried to break this down as Inoue is the offensive fighter and Fulton is the defensive fighter. But what they missed was Inoue is a special defensive fighter too. He's top 10 in all CompuBox defensive categories. And you saw early on that he can out Fulton at what Fulton does best.
You know where I thought Fulton was a little faulty? I was talking to Evan Young, who gambles, a real sharp guy, and I was talking to Fight Ghost, who I've known for years personally. And, for the record, my predictions are both Inoue and Crawford in 10 this week. I said the one thing about Fulton that's interesting, and I tweeted it, he's not that slick. He's athletic. He's sound. He's fundamentally really good. He's not slick. Anyone that's slick does not get touched up as much as he did against Brandon Figueroa. And I thought it was alarming that Blue Nose Lopez drilled him and buzzed him. And I said, you know what? With the way Inoue steps into his punches, closes the gap, and he's so quick and compact in his punching motion, this is going to be very, very hard. But once he lost the boxing battle, guys, I don't know if there's anything Fulton could have done. I really don't. I mean, as soon as he gets outboxed and he can't bank rounds and hold on, like you said, Calix, that fight in round 2 was essentially over. It was just a matter of when.
He didn't have an eraser, and he tried. I mean, I give him credit. 5th round through 7th round, he was landing the most right hands because Inoue starts to open up. But the problem with that is when you catch Inoue, he's one of those guys that's like you poke the bear, right? And when you catch him, Bud Crawford is the same way. They see red, and they get angrier, and they get meaner. They're sadistic fighters. Inoue is, and that's when I started getting worried about Fulton for a while because I tweeted around 5. I said, okay, the live betting odds are now minus 3,000, number one.
Yeah.
And number 2, he's lost every round. So you start to get to that point where you're like, do you keep him in there with a guy like Inoue who is not interested in getting a decision? He will continue to step on it and try to knock your head off.
He systematically broke him down. I agree. After round 2, I was thinking, I'm not going to say I thought it was over, but I thought it was very unlikely for Fulton to come back. Fulton tried to get on the inside, didn't work. He was trying to do different things. It just didn't work. A frustrating part of the fight was Timothy Bradley. Like, I like Timothy Bradley, but
I love Timmy.
look, I just, he kept doing this emphasis on, well, he's blocking a lot of those shots. Tim, most boxers land around 40% or less of their punches. So yes, most of them are getting dodged or blocked, but he's landing so many more punches on Fulton than Fulton landed on him. Keep emphasizing on the fact that some of them were blocked means literally nothing. And never once did he emphasize on Inoue blocking a shot or dodging a punch. The one thing that stuck out to me, I said it before the fight, and this just solidified it for me, was the reflexes of Inoue.
Yeah. Reflexes
are probably the best in the game. There were some jabs he was making Inoue miss, like, from here. I mean, it's amazing what he was able to do. And I think the reason people were calling Fulton slick, we all know why, because he's
we know why.
He's an African-American fighter, and it's just that's the stereotype.
We used to laugh about that all the time when we were at Hailstorm Sports, because we covered NBA too. And they used to do this thing where they always compared the white guy who can score in the draft to Larry Bird. And it's like, Adam Morrison is not Larry Bird, and Stephen Fulton Jr. is not Pernell Whitaker. Come on.
No.
You know who taught me about how guys are not really slick, and especially if they're southpaw? And Redman, Stephen Edwards, a good friend of mine, I actually spoke to him this morning. He's like, Steve, the act of being slick is being right next to somebody and making them miss and using their own motion against you. And this is where the stereotypes do come in with boxers. And it's not really racist. It's not anything evil. There's nothing really bad intentions. It's just like stereotypes. We have preconceived notions. But in a way, since the first Donaire fight, where I thought defensively he was a little careless and he paid for it, he's become a really slippery guy in terms of the slip counter, catch and counter, making guys miss, ducking under, going in and out, and then hitting you with blind right hands. And see, that's where he's really versatile. He could either just lead with the jab like most orthodox fighters, or he could throw the right hand in different ways, either as a lead punch or a counter. And you're right. I thought, to me, from the very first time that Fulton got really drilled on one of those punches that were not blocked, the way he reacted, it was like, uh-oh, this guy still swings a Louisville Slugger. This is not a wiffle ball. And you're right, Adi, that let's say you block 5 of my punches. The problem is, if I'm outlanding you like 10-1, it almost, like, people always talk about the 4 precepts or the 4 categories of scoring. Guys, 80% really matters the most. That's punching. The other ones are variables. It's really about who lands more punches. That's really professional boxing when you score it.
Yeah, you know, if you watch, I think it's a microcosm of who Inoue is and why he's great. We talked about the resume, all that stuff, but just look at him and how he fights. That 3-punch combination he landed to send Fulton to hell, and it was eventually his demise about 15 seconds later, how he finished.
Boxing is like slow motion to this guy, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
But he's trying to set up the straight right upstairs. He does it by disguising it with the left jab downstairs, immediately lands the straight right, and then as Fulton is going backwards, he jumps forward. And Steve, I saw a picture of this when he's throwing his punch. His feet are off the ground, and he lands the left hook that almost takes Fulton's head off as he's going down. That 3-punch combination right there, it symbolizes how great of a technical fighter this is. I've seen Tank Davis talk about Inoue, and he's like, that guy has special punch placement. It's punch placement, it's angles, it's setting it all up. He is the full package.
I mean, look at that right hand that sent down Donaire in their rematch late in round 1, how quick it was and how straight it was from about, 6 to 8 inches. And it was kind of in no man's land. And I know he must have been able to work at this with really good sparring, because he did the same thing to Maloney. These guys do not even see the right hand. And I know, and I've seen some training footage of this. And Rudy Hernandez, the brother of the late, great Gennaro Hernandez, who's trained world champions, big UFC cut man. And he told me 4 years ago, Steve, that's the greatest Japanese fighter ever. And that's the best fighter in the world. I mean, that's the guy who said, Steve, I'm just telling you, he's really special. And Rudy says, you have to really practice at punching properly. And if you look at the slow motion replays and the still photos, when Inoue hits the target, the two knuckles, what I call the barrel of the bat, he's always landing on it. It's not like he's cuffing. It's not off center. He is consistently hitting right where he should. And he practices that over and over again. I've seen it. I've seen some videos. And then he does it with speed, quickness, and twitch, which, again, are not necessarily associated with Asian fighters. And I thought that was the other thing. Calix, D-Style, I thought Inoue was the better athlete in there by far today.
Oh, that's not even
better
a question.
athlete, better defensive fighter. He was greater at everything.
Look, it was an all-around.
Like which shocked everybody, right? I mean, because I expected some resistance from Fulton. There was none.
Too. Look, I think he can. Look, I can't even box Inoue as a style. I can't even say, oh, he's a counterpuncher or he's like I can't because he could do everything. He just outboxed. Like I kept hearing all week, oh, Fulton, he beats you at your own game. I still don't think he beat Figueroa. I think Figueroa forced that type of fight. I actually scored it for Figueroa myself, but it was a close fight. But like he literally outboxed this dude. That's what he did. He beat him at his own game early on.
The Figueroa fight, I thought could have gone either way. I don't have an argument with that decision, but that's the fight where obviously Figueroa is a big guy. He could probably fight at 130. He's very rangy and he throws in volume. And he works in volume and he'll give up a little technique. But again, he'll swarm you with leather. But when he touched up Fulton as much as he did, I just remember thinking, man, I know Inoue is very sharp and he's incredibly accurate. And he may not be as big, but I think his punches are just sharper with more force. I just kept saying to myself, again, I've seen slick fighters. Pernell Whitaker could fight anybody and basically make you miss. Out of 100 punches, you'll land 9, you'll land 5. Just too much leather was being touched by Fulton, where I said, you know what? He's athletic and he's sound, but he is not slick. And it was really interesting. There were times where Fulton did not want to throw punches as the initiator because I think he realized something's going to come right back at me. Inoue has become really good at timing and catching and countering, or using the pull counter, as they call it. And to me, it was actually stunning how easy he made it, because I did think Fulton would be a little bit more competitive.
Yeah, and I think another fallacy coming in was people thought that Fulton was going to be able to grab and hold and back Inoue up and keep him on his heels. I think that's a fallacy because D-Style and I talk about this all the time. We stopped using the word height advantage, reach advantage, because as time goes on, it looks like more so now that fighters who are bigger, taller cannot use those advantages and they become a disadvantage. It's almost a discrepancy, a disparity at this point. And, I was watching a podcast with Gilbert Arenas yesterday, and he's talking about how he always struggled defensively, not against the Kobe Bryants, not against the Kawhi Leonards as far as great defensive players. He struggled against the shorter athletic guys because the low center of gravity, they get physical, they get underneath you. And I feel it's the same way with guys like Inoue, big calves, bottom heavy, and he's not going to give up that ground. He's not.
You know what's interesting? If you go back and you study Inoue, he's the shorter guy most of the time. This whole perception that suddenly he's going to be looking up at somebody in the ring. Jamie McDonald was a tall, lanky guy, right? Donaire is a guy with a lot of length and reach. He's already faced those guys. And
Donaire fought at 126.
Right, and he actually buzzed everybody like Nicholas Walters. He actually hurt Frampton once. He just was not big enough. But the command that Inoue has, whether it's in the center of the ring, and also he's one of the few guys he can run you into shots, so he can actually punch off his back foot. He does have a check counter hook. He does. And there's such a wide variety of punches, but I just thought it was so funny, the perception that somehow Inoue is overrated and he's a hype job. And I'm just like you guys. I am retweeting all of these old screenshots. I know I'm being very obnoxious, and if you unfollow me, I wouldn't blame you. But quite frankly, a lot of these guys bring it on. And D-Style, I'm with you. It's not about Fulton. Fulton's fine. I'm good with Fulton. It's his pseudo fans who, let's face it, they racialize a lot of this stuff. They're not smart enough to understand their own hypocrisy. Quite frankly, they deserve all of this wrath. And if this does not at least ruin their day a little bit, then guess what? We have failed.
Yeah, you know what though? It's also like the enablers. Like for example, all week I kept hearing Inoue is a fraud. Inoue is he's overrated. He's a creation of the old media, whatever the fuck that means. He's they're questioning his honor. They're saying he's a cheater. They're alluding that he's arrogant. They're alluding that he doesn't do. And look, one guy starts off by saying, "Oh, he was questioning how the randomness of the testing, and then that devolves into some crap on some of these channels on here that he didn't take testing and that he had issues with PEDs, and because it's like like the old phone game, like it dumbs down a little bit and it gets worse. I all week, and to me it's like, okay, whatever, right, we'll see on fight night, right, or fight morning,
and then
right?
the stacking. Right.
Yeah, the stacking, and then like there's issues with the gloves. It looked like a perfectly normal video to me where they were checking the gloves and nothing crazy. But here's the thing: today, when they're getting their medicine, I thought you said it was a hype job. What's up? I thought you said he wasn't shit. What are you gonna say now? That all of a sudden, oh my God, why are you talking about Fulton? Respect Fulton. Like, it's not about Fulton. Yeah. I'm talking to your jackasses. That's who I'm talking to. I'm talking to those pieces of shits that have been talking all that shit. And you know who's worse? The ones that stayed silent, all right, throughout the whole week. All this bad shit about Inoue. And then today they're coming out. Oh, come on, guys. Don't do the I told you so.
Yeah, we can't have fighters not want to fight because of the blowback. Okay. This is another one that kills me, fellas. Fulton. He's so brave. He didn't have to do this. If he wanted the $3 million, he had to. Hey, all you That's Bill Gateses out there, all you Warren Buffetts, the reason why this fight is not in Philly is because 14 people would have showed up. I just looked it up earlier. The last time Fulton was actually showcased in Pennsylvania, not even Philadelphia, it was Bethlehem. It was 2017. Yep. This is where the yen was. Okay, so ask Fulton, would you rather fight for $500,000 or $3 million plus? And by the way, this is what drives me nuts. Every year there are hundreds of foreign fighters that come here.
Every year. And here's the thing, though.
I don't get why aren't they given credit?
Yeah, but I get the argument of, look, because I gave Fulton credit for saying, hey, I want to go fight this guy. Of course, $3 million is a big incentive, right? But we have seen dudes, not. I didn't see Benavidez, go to bat and say, let me go over there to fight. You didn't do that. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. But what I'll say is this. Those same people, don't they realize, look at what you were putting on Inoue, right? You were making the fight uncomfortable for some fight fans because in the back of their mind, they're like, look, I know Inoue's a good fighter, but if he loses this fight, they're going to be calling him a hype job and, I told you he wasn't shit. You know what I mean? That is the stakes that was involved for Inoue. And I get, somebody told me, hey, greatness is about shutting up your critics and silence. I get all that. But that's what you're putting on Inoue. Yet you want me to sit back and be like, but don't criticize the idiots that were saying shit about Inoue, because somehow that's attacking Fulton. And look at what the risk he took, right? Fulton did not have the baggage in this fight or the expectations in this fight that Inoue had. Inoue had to deliver, or he would have been known as a hype job for the rest of his career, according to those fans.
You know, it's interesting, talking about the stacking. I asked Joe Delgado, who was the trainer for Antonio Nieves, who told me flat out, this is the best fighter in the world. When I went up against him with Nieves, I said, oh, my God. And he told me Saturday, Steve, watch. This will be a knockout. And I asked him, though, did you find any irregularities in terms of the hand wraps when you fought him? Because you had a representative there, a guy named Alex Cooper, I think, or something like that. He said, Steve, here's what happened. When they started to wrap their hands, they tried to do something, and the commission in California said, oh, no, you can't do that. You know what they did? In a way, they said, oh, okay, can we do this? And they said, yes, do that. And they did it. That was it. It's not like they snuck in a horseshoe from their back pocket, and while the commissioner's taking a piss, put that horseshoe, just like, okay, hey, wrap it up. Bullseye. I mean, let's see. We had no issues with the way they wrapped their hands. They were told by the commission, not our guy, that you can't do that. The commission just say our rules here do not allow that, and all they said was, "Then we will comply."
Here's the best part, though. He didn't do the stacking. Inoue just did it the way they want it.
Yeah.
And I loved how Inoue's rap. He kept stopping every like 10 seconds. Is this okay?
Yeah.
Okay. You know what I mean? Because now I'm thinking, what are you going to say now, bro?
Hey, D, there are cutmen, and I know Stitch Strand did a video. There are cutmen that say, Steve, as long as the stuff is not around the knuckles, they don't even think it's a big deal. They really don't. I mean, and the other ones, I know certain people disagree, but I was in the locker room for a fight. When I was at ESPN, I was embedded in the camp of Israel Madrimov. It was on the undercard of Jesse Vargas, Mikey Garcia. So I'm doing a story as I'm part of their camp. So I get to get checked in. So the story is behind the scenes with Madrimov. Based on the way they check you in from the time you get to the front gate of where the locker room is, they tell you where to go. And all the time that you're going through the corridors of the arena, and that was at the Star at Frisco, Texas, you are surrounded by commissions and inspectors. And unless you're Harry Houdini and they bring you a Ziploc bag with all the material that you're going to use, gauze, tape, whatever, right? And right there, then literally there's more than one in Texas. Unless you are Harry Houdini, I think it's almost impossible to like slip in a Mickey. I really believe that. You got to be like David Copperfield and Robert Garcia. And I'm glad he spoke up, or his Twitter account, saying this guy has fought in various jurisdictions in America and abroad. There's never been an issue. An old wacky Wahid, that trainer, I thought he made an ass out of himself. And I actually think he put Fulton in a very tough position. And when he said, well, we may not go into the ring, Fulton looked at him like, oh, hell no. Oh, I'm getting my $3 million.
I have 3 million reasons why I'm going
yeah.
Steve, I think his team did him a disservice in a couple ways. First, they should have made that MJ Akhmadelia fight. They should have went aggressively after that fight because he could have been undisputed. And number two, he could have stayed active. He could have got that fight in because look, Tapales beats Akhmadelia. Now Inoue is going to beat Tapales and become undisputed, which Fulton could have done.
I think Tapales is going to take it. What do you mean?
Right. But Steve, 14-month layoff. Why does the PBC continue to put their fighters in big fights coming off of long layoffs? Why are they doing this?
That sounds familiar.
Spence on Saturday, 15 months.
Exactly. Huh.
Charlo, 17 months against Canelo. And why it was troublesome in this fight, especially, is Inoue is a sadistic, fast starter. And you can't come off a long layoff fighting this guy. You just can't.
I mean, when you are facing a combination of speed, power, quickness, and reflexes like an Inoue, there are no real feel-out rounds. There really isn't, because one punch can do it. I mean, look at the Donaire rematch. That was a relatively tame 2 minutes and 45 seconds until that lightning bolt with that sneaky little right hand came, and the fight was essentially, well, basically over. And that's the thing that really gets me. So when they're doing all this stuff about the drug testing, he's not a nice guy, he won't talk to us. Here's the thing that bothered me. And, you know, I know a lot of these guys that do this. Look, they work for certain platforms that cater to certain fans and fighters. It is all about access. And there are certain things they can say about certain fighters that they won't say about others. It's the God's honest truth. It's the game. It is what it is. I felt as though, but here's the difference, though. Here's where I thought Inoue was insulated from it. The guy speaks no English.
No.
Like, he doesn't know what the hell's being said about him. So it's like he had an umbrella. Like, none of the drops got on him.
You know what? Do you think there was like a mental kind of like, because I'm sure Inoue through the interpretation heard it in the press conference. So if you're a puncher and you know your punch is for real, right?
Yeah.
And the other dude's trainer saying, "Oh, this guy, he's alluding to the fact that it's the stacking, that's why he punches like that. We don't want him to do that, and this and that, and you know in the back of your mind, you're like, yeah, that shit has nothing to do as to why I fucking hit hard, like nothing. Like that has to give you some confidence,
right.
Like that, because it's like you really believe that's why I hit hard. Like I think it gave him confidence. To be honest with you.
Well, D, how about this? What if you're Stephen Fulton and you're not fully aboard with the plan? Like, you really don't know that much about what's going to be said here. What if you're the opponent of Inoue and you're just kind of sitting there going, Jesus Christ, what am I going to get hit with here?
I will look at my trainer and be like, why are you so worried, bro?
Relax.
Like,
Why are you so scary? What's going on? Why are you so scared? Are you scared for my life?
He just can go both ways. It can embolden Inoue, but if you are being told, all I know is one thing: with the way he wraps his hands, this is like a shotgun blast. It's like the hammer of Thor and an aluminum black magic Easton baseball bat. If I'm the opponent, I'm thinking, really? Ah, shit. I mean, no, because if they say this game is so mental, I don't know how that really helps. And here's the other thing, though, D. When you start acting this way, and it's not just one thing, it's just like this pattern of behavior for 5, 6, 7 days leading into the fight. The public is going to be against you, and if you lose the way you did today, well, we've been on Twitter, guys, the last 5, 6 hours.
Look, I know that sometimes, and I say this, people read too much into the weigh-ins. They do. But I'm not gonna like when I saw Inoue give him that look, like he did give him like oh, you don't even know what the fuck's coming.
Yeah,
like
and he saw that's what I was about to say. And Steve, you met my guy Surgical Boxing. Yeah. He was out in LA with us at the dinner. Great channel, by the way. Shout out to him. And I was just texting him back and forth again, and he texted me this morning. He said, "You don't piss off a Japanese fighter. They're big on honor." They're big on decorum. They're big on this is a sport. And they made this personal where it didn't need to be personal. And the problem with this is there's a huge power gap between the two fighters. And I could see it at the weigh-in. Inoue was different at this weigh-in. He just gave Fulton Jr. a look like, y'all didn't have to take it here. You didn't have to take it here.
You remember when Drago like shook his head at Apollo Creed? Like, and that's what it looked like, bro.
Hey, you know what's interesting, guys? But I just want to give Inoue credit. Here's a guy that was a highly accomplished, already among the top 4 or 5 fighters in the game. Last year, he spent a month out in America just saying, I want to spar American guys like Azad Hovhanessian. I think a few other guys that I know that have been on TV. And Doug Fisher found his way into the gym at Wildcard. He was one of like 4 or 5 guys. It was very private. Doug wrote a great story on it. You guys should talk to Doug about it, what he saw. But that's, again, a guy saying, you know what? I'm going to learn something here. I'm going to spend like Junto Nakatani. I spent time with him at the gym. Rudy brings him out for about 6 weeks. He's a very nice young man. But not, in a way, I think in my own view is this. He had Fulton on his mind back then because he figured out, you know, if I'm going to face these slick Americans who may be a little twitchy, they have a certain style, and it is different. A lot of British fighters have told me that have come over saying, Steve, American sparring is different. I've been told that a lot. He knew. See, I think he had an understanding. If you read his statements, like he gave this missive, it read like the preamble, right? Stephen Fulton is a great. I just read that in Morgan Freeman's voice, right? So I'm thinking, wow, this guy really respects Fulton. Like he understood, like this guy's really good. I'm gonna beat his ass, but I want to.
It was 4 paragraphs. 4 paragraphs.
It was very well written, you know. And I'm like, wow. It's always like,
you know what though? When a great fighter respects you, you're not gonna catch him on a bad night.
Right.
Right. He's gonna be ready. And he was.
Do you think Fulton did not understand what he was getting into till it was too late, which is round 1?
I believe so. You know what? And people were, and I've seen people saying, Fulton, why didn't he let his hands? Let his hands go. Well, I think it's obvious why not. Second, well, he was just there. He looked scared, bro. If you're fighting someone, you move a muscle and he makes you pay, right? Yeah. Like, cause that's what Inoue does. He stifles guys, and he did like, well, when I do this, he jabs me. If I blink one eye, if I take a step back, he's on. Like he didn't know what to do. And at the and credit to Bradley, he said this. He had him like Inoue knew what he was gonna do. Yep. He was punching where Fulton was gonna move, not where Fulton was.
Exactly.
And so that's why Fulton he didn't know what to do at that point. And he had no answers. And it is like, I did notice that when Fulton tried to get on the inside, like, I was like, damn, I never seen a Japanese fighter like know how to clinch. And like, it was crazy. He knew what to do.
You know, Joe Delgado told me that when Nieves is in there, he said, okay, looking at this tape, Steve, early on, and this is about 5 years ago, he said, Steve, I never really noticed. And I noticed, I said, this guy doesn't like the infight. He goes, so we're going to crowd him a little bit at times. He goes, in the middle of the second round, we get close, and he throws a shovel hook to Antonio Nieves. And he said, I swear, Joe goes, I said, okay, what the hell did we get into? I'm getting the hell out of here. He said, the first time I could stop the fight, I'm not letting Antonio get hurt. He just flat out said, by the second round, I said, Jesus Christ, we're in it today. And you see the way Joe stopped the fight. It was after round 5, after the knockdown. He told Antonio, we've done well as we can. You have nothing to be ashamed of. I am not letting you get banged up. So
Steve,
that's the quarry. That is the quandary with them. He can outbox you from at length, but inside you are now getting into the hornet's nest.
Is that where he got that stab to the solar plexus? Was very impressive.
Oh.
I noticed it from round one. I noticed it.
Yeah.
And it's one of those punches that even when you're watching it, it doesn't like stick out to you. It doesn't like, oh my God, he just hit him but it just, you could just tell it was bothering Fulton as the fight progressed.
yes.
I mean, he was just hurting him with it.
Putting the mouth breathers to the side and just it seems like there's a special respect for Inoue throughout the boxing public, people who actually fight, trainers. What is his weight ceiling, you think? Because coming into this fight, I got no data on him at 122, so I'm like, we'll see. We'll have a better idea tomorrow. After watching this fight,
well, let me rephrase that. Does he break
After
Manny
watching this
Pacquiao's
fight-
record?
See, 8. See, what is he at now? 4?
he's
It
at
should be 5, but yeah, it's 4.
Yeah, because he
should be
skipped
5.
one. He skipped one. You're right. So here's
He's
the
going to
thing.
regret that, I think, if
So
he's trying to break Pacquiao's record.
26, 30, 35, 40. He has to go all the way to junior welter. See, I think his threshold is 26
Yeah.
or 22.
30 is where it starts to get tough, right? Because
Well,
you got
what about with the
Cordina.
right opponents? Like, it's going to sound crazy, but at 135, I think he beats Cambozas, for example.
Yeah, Tim Bradley and I were texting earlier, and he said, Steve, what's the threshold? And I said 22, 26. He says, no, I think 30. So Tim's pretty high on it. Look, I actually think Robezi Ramirez, he has the toughest style at 26. Now, against Bernardo Lopez and those other Mexicans there, I kind of like Inoue's chances to be. But you know what? I
Ray
wouldn't
Vargas.
mind if top rank, and I've called Bob Arum, and I think he's into his 8th sake bomb, so I'll probably call him. I'll probably have to call him like Friday.
He's having a great time, huh?
Yeah, not a great. Bob's great. Bob always calls back, but Bob and Ohashi are having a great time. The Sapporo is flowing, right, like the Mississippi, probably, right? So, but I want to ask him, because I asked him last year. I said, "Are we now not going to see Inoue in America?" Because think about it, guys. When we saw Inoue, it was during the bubble. It ruined the whole run because the fight with Casamero was selling well at the Mandalay Bay. Then he was at the bubble against like mandatories that, were okay. And I've said this to Bob. I said, Bob, I guarantee you this. If you put Inoue in America at this stage, and this isn't even before the Fulton win, there would be like a Gennady Golovkin 2014, 2015 feel. I believe he could actually like sell legitimate tickets in LA, New York, wherever there's just general boxing fans. Because I think, I don't know if you guys agree, but if you put him against a solid guy, and let's say you did him at the Forum like you did Golovkin, I believe you can get at least 10,000 people. At least.
Oh, yeah. At least.
But does he have to?
That's the thing.
Yeah, does he? Well, look, here's the other thing. In Japan, with that streaming deal, I forgot what streaming thing they do. Like, he's literally making money that is reserved for welterweight champions on pay-per-view.
Wow.
I mean, Rick Glazer was on another show, our guy, Coach Malachi, and Rick's in the know. Rick's been told that Inoue made $10 million for this fight, and I've heard for other fights it was in that neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
So when people say, well, are we always going to get up to watch Inoue at 4:00 in the morning?
Worth it.
He may not give a shit. I know we will, but at the end of the day, it's not going to impact his money because the media rights in Japan are huge. And Calix, our guy Andrew's out there taking pictures of Japan. I mean, he's on subway cars. There's signage of Inoue everywhere. He's treated like an NBA player out here. That's really good in that city.
Look how they treated Fulton.
Yes.
Fulton's never been sworn by fans, like ever.
Oh, D. That's another one that we heard 2 weeks ago on Twitter. Hey, Steph, don't let them tire you out. Don't let them. Oh my God! Now the hospitality.
Don't let them tire you out with the pictures and the niceness.
And I'm like, they're treating him like a star. Okay.
Like, careful with all those signatures.
That's why he didn't throw his right hand. He had carpal tunnel syndrome from actually scribbling out his name more than 5 times in a day.
It needs to be told here, though, is he just did, I think, 51 or 61,000 in revenue for a live gate in Minnesota in his last fight. People just don't support him, and his pretend fans, we're his real fans. We support him before, we'll support him after. But these guys who tried to pick him up for this fight, who were saying this is going to be Hiroshima, Nagasaki 2.0, and now they're going to drop him because they don't pay attention to anything
Well,
above the 135.
Callets, here's the interesting thing. When we had Boots Ennis on the show a couple weeks ago before his fight, and I love Boots. I'm his biggest fan. I still think he's the real deal. Yeah. But I asked him, like, when are you going back to Philly? I mean, because he hasn't fought there since 2018, I believe, at the 2300 Theater when he was still on Showbox. So when people say, and again, you can have your thoughts. I give Al Heyman and PBC credit. They've made some good fights this year. But in terms of building other guys into attractions, I don't want to hear that they do a great job when a guy like Boots Ennis, who has an unbelievable style, pretty nice personality, you don't even try. You don't even try to build them. And then you don't look. And the reason why Fulton had to go to Japan is because they didn't build his value in the States. So
and
stop.
Steve,
but you know what? If you're, go.
Something else fundamentally is wrong because despite there's some discrepancy on what the actual stat is, but PBC versus Top Rank, they're now either 5-21-1, 4-20, depending on who you talk to. Some people even say 7-30, something like that. They have an atrocious record.
Yeah,
most promotional record.
Is that the
Top
B
rank.
team though?
What is going on there?
With you because like John Molina not being able to beat Terrence Crawford. I mean, is that really right. PBC? You know, I think you have to look at the A levels. Like I would only count fights like Fury Wilder, but then at the same time, Fury was not developed by Top Rank, right? Now Crawford Spence. Now that is a fight where both promotional outlets kind of developed their guys from scratch. But there is a point to be made. Why even risk it when you can just continue to go in-house? But I have a question about the PBC. Who's their young star? Maybe Morrell, but he's Cuban. And everyone's going to avoid him. So I'm being dead serious. When you say, give me a young top-ranked prospect, I can name you 10 of them that I like. Yeah. Abdullah Mason, Keyshawn Davis, who didn't look all that great. Jared Anderson, right? Tiger Johnson, Xander Zayas. We'll see how Can you give me that same type of
Martin? I don't know.
Right. I mean, who's the PBC youngster that you say, wow, we're going to plant our flag with that guy? I mean, Eddie Hearn in America has Diego Pacheco at least, right? Every company has somebody, and I ask people, who is the PBC next generation? Tell me. Yeah. Ramos is pretty good. That's a good young fighter. The younger Ramos, he's pretty good.
That's true. Look, I just wanted to make this point about Inoue. I think not just Inoue. I think his opponents, future opponents, want to fight in Japan. It's more money.
It's where the yen is.
That is from 120, from 130 below. He's the cash cow, from what I'm hearing. That's the cash cow in those weight classes, right there.
I mean, look, if you are a Sam Goodman who beat Elise Raim for that #1 spot, and you kind of know, like, look, my options are limited. And they're saying, hey, look, you're going to be a heavy underdog, but you can make $1 million or $2 fighting this guy. That guy's a real fighter. He did a great job against Aleem, outworked him late. This is what the fight game should be. I just, the double standard that somehow every fighter in the world is supposed to come to America, but then all these American fighters are supposed to never travel. And historically, Marvin Hagler had to win his title overseas. So did Errol Spence. So did Terrence Crawford. Gennady Golovkin, when he became an American entity, went to go fight Kell Brook. The sense of entitlement that is given, and it's really given by a lot of the fans to these fighters, to me, is bizarre.
It shouldn't shock people why we're starting to see a gap close, because I feel like, we talked about it last week, D-Style, the Pygmalion effect states that you live either up or down to the expectations around you, right? Of what people expect from you. It seems like our expectations of American fighters has lowered, and our expectations of foreign fighters is still high. So it shouldn't surprise people that foreign fighters are starting to achieve things. And our fighters, if you look at the belt count, Steve, we're now at 20 out of 68 major belts. But all of those belts are centralized between 135 and 154, pretty much. Outside of 135 to 154, as far as champions, we're pretty much non-existent right now in 13 of 17 weight classes.
I want to ask, before he has to go, I want to ask Steve Kim a question. So what do you make of what I call the American test? Like, I feel like every foreign fighter is not proven in the eyes of American fight fans, not all of them, but a lot of them, until they prove themselves against an American fighter. Like
Yeah.
this day and age, is the American fighter really the litmus test at this point?
Yeah, that's a very good point because I think Frank Martin. It was so funny before the fight. He's the next great lightweight, right? But then he fights a guy that if anyone else fought him, like let's say if Keyshawn Davis would have fought that exact same guy and went the distance, the narrative would have been from these people. He fought a Euro bum and struggled. Frank Martin, oh, great test. Great test. I mean, that's a character builder. And I'm like, it's the same thing. And at least I'm consistent about it. I didn't like the way Keyshawn really looked against Patera this past weekend. I thought it was a very uneven, unfocused performance.
Yeah.
Right? But you are right that somehow some of the best fighters in the world have to come over here to prove something, even if they're the champion, which I've always found maybe at one point that was the truth, but it all started, in my view, this prejudice, if you want to call it, with the likes of Vasyl Lomachenko, Sergey Kovalev, Ruslan Provodnikov, and Golovkin. That's where, in my view, the xenophobia started to seep in. I'm being serious about it, and I've always said, a lot of these guys, they just want to make a living. They really do. The biased nature of the fans. What I find funny about it, guys, is that if you point the finger back at them, it's like they can't take it. Like some guy, I forgot what his name is, but he made some crack about this is why I can't rock with Inoue, that he can't bend on the hand wraps, and that's why they lost World War II. Okay, I mean, I didn't know if that was like trying to market Oppenheimer, but anyway, so I saved that tweet, and as soon as the fight was waved off, I just did a retweet with the quote. I'm such an asshole. I wrote, "Yeah, but Inoue didn't Pearl Harbor him." So, and like the guy said, "Well, that took place in the U.S." I was like, "Oh, you're a scholar. Oh, okay." Yeah. Well, my view is that, well, why'd you go there? I mean, if it's just jokes, then take jokes. And I've always found it strange about the emotional impact or the emotional immaturity of these fans. It's like, is your life really just about the results of fights? That somehow that is such a strong part of your identity. It really matters that much? Honestly, does it?
Steve, I wanted to ask you before you got to go in a couple minutes, Spence Crawford and your prediction, what you think about that fight, because I said coming in this week, I think the theme this week is special smaller fighter versus great bigger fighter. I've always viewed Spence as sort of a great modern welterweight, a great welterweight of his era, but I think Bud Crawford's a generational talent. We talked to Roberto Diaz. Roberto Diaz said, I think Bud Crawford is one of the fighters of this era who can compete with the welterweights of every other era. And I think that's the difference. I think it's levels. But what do you think about this fight going into this week? And is that a fair assessment of it?
Yeah, that's kind of, look, I told you earlier, I like Crawford in 10. I don't know if he's younger, but he's a fresher athlete, less trauma. And the biggest mistake, or I don't know if it's a mistake, but one of the byproducts of delaying this fight the way they did, as they strung it out on Crawford, they let him grow into being a legitimate 47. This fight, in my view, physically would have suited Errol Spence much better in 2019 or 20. Crawford is now a legitimate 147. He's more versatile. He's a better athlete. He can switch hit. He's a little bit quicker off the trigger. And another thing that I've noticed, guys, and maybe it's just my lying eyes, Errol Spence already looks weight drained from last week's media workouts. He looks awfully dry and very, very tight. And I say to myself, while one guy's grown into being a legitimate bona fide 47, Errol Spence probably could be fighting. If you did day of weigh-ins, Errol Spence would be a middleweight. These things matter at a certain age. Everyone has a threshold. Everyone has a sell-by date. And when it comes to being at a weight, and keep this in mind, Errol Spence has been at 147 since the 2012 Olympics and when he turned pro. So we're talking about more than a decade at a certain weight class. And when I take a look at the mentality, Terrence Crawford is the meanest Doberman in the game. He truly is. So I don't think he can have the slow start. We know the politics at play. I told one of his camp members, Do not leave this in the hands of the judges, because we know the politics at play.
Yes.
And I do like Crawford in 10, guys.
It's sort of ironic that Crawford and Inoue have a lot in common: temperament, killer instinct, finishing ability. They're both sadistic fighters, right? They both want to knock your head off, right? And I think that's the theme this week. Is I think the two special fighters are going to win the fights. And to your point, real quick, is I think the aging out process backfired, right?
Yeah.
Is the assessment, because lifestyle. Spence is, crashing a Ferrari, and he's not living the lifestyle that Bud Crawford lives. And Bud Crawford stays close to weight. He stays in the gym, spins balloons, and it probably shows up on Saturday, right?
And you mentioned it earlier, Cal. It's the layoff. Taking Avanesian was a very smart move, because someone in that camp said, Steve, they're trying to age and rust us out. The money was good. You might as well take on Avanesian. Again, keep this in mind. Errol Spence has not seen live action since April of 2022, because I remember I was at the Miami Spring game. And I'm just thinking, if you would have told me, Steve, that's going to be his last fight for 16, 17 months, I would have given you odds. I said, why? I just did not get that. And I think these things do matter when everything else is relatively equal. Give me the more active fighter who is not as banged up. And in my view, those check marks, they go into the box of Terrence Crawford.
And Steve, that's a conversation we really need to have on another day. And I'd love to have you back in the future, because inactivity, that needs to be spoken of. I know you and Dougie have done a lot of work over at Ring with that. It's just brutal. It's brutal.
Oh, it is. There's no doubt about it. And it's funny, a lot of ex-pros and guys like Tim Bradley, Matt Macklin, who've been through the process, they always say, Steve, don't let anyone talk you out of it. Keep pushing it, because we know you are right. They flat out tell me you're right.
Yeah. Steve, appreciate you coming through and sharing time with. I know you're a busy man today.
Appreciate you guys.
I know you're a busy man today. Look forward to the 3 knockdown rule coming out after that performance. So appreciate you coming through.
Yeah.
All right, Cal. We'll do it again soon. Appreciate you guys.
Yep.
Sounds good.
That is the great Steve Kim. Appreciate him for coming through. And D-Style, we got another show tonight. What time is it? Let everybody know where it's at.
Look, 7 p.m. Eastern. That's 6 Central. That's 5 Mountain, 4 Pacific. Hit us on D-Style Boxing. Feel free to subscribe, guys. A lot of content there. By the way, I'm looking forward to the show tonight. We're going to have Freitos Rojas, who had the opportunity to have his first televised fight on Showtime when Donaire's fight got moved. So worked out for everybody, right? In a sense. So we're going to get to talk to him. He's going to return to the podcast. I had him on when he was a 1-0 prospect, and now we're going to have him back. That is becoming a contender. So looking forward to that. We're going to have True School Sports on with us, and it should be a great show. Also Thursday, the Roundtable on my channel as well. So you got to tune in. A lot of great content. HCP is bringing it. And like always, this has to be said, none of this is possible without you guys, man. We appreciate you guys' support. And but with that said, make sure you hit the like button. You know what I mean? Like, hit that like button for us, and you get us to that's our goal, man. Every show 100 likes. Get us to 100 likes. I know you guys should do it if you're listening on the archive and all that, man. So there you go.
Yep, play it back, hit that like, and we appreciate y'all rolling through, and see y'all and see you D-Style in about 2 hours over in your channel. There's the link right there. Make sure to click it, share it, save it, and we'll see y'all in a couple hours over there. God bless. Peace.